Salutations, everypup, and welcome to Chapter 48 of The One They Call Broccoli by Texiliaz. As always, the link to the fic will be in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's jump on into it. Chapter 48, The Overhaul Raid, with art. Author's notes. Hello, everyone. This is a bit of a messy chapter since I didn't want to rewrite a bunch of stuff that happens in canon. So if you feel like any scenes are missing, like the one where Togata fights 1A, just assume it happens like in canon. Anyway, hope you all enjoy this chapter. Izuku's point of view. Now that they had their license, they were allowed to head out on their first internships. Izuku had chosen to go with Togata-senpai, since he was interning with Sir Night-Eye. Izuku had always admired that hero and was excited to work under him. Or, at least, he used to admire him, until he actually met the man. The Vestiges had been hesitant about his choice, and Izuku hadn't been able to understand why. Until literally just now. You don't deserve to have one for all. Sir Night-Eye scoffed. That quirk should have gone to someone worthy, like Mirio. The Vestiges were all bristling at that, One for All crackling to life beneath their skin as they glared at the man. How dare you! They all hissed, surprising Izuku. He hadn't even noticed they had taken over. Even second and third were angry, which meant they all truly were pissed. See, so emotional, Sir Night-Eye said with a roll of his eyes, only to get cut off by the Vestiges. You shut your fucking mouth, Mirai! They snarled, turning Izuku's face into an angry grimace. You do not speak of Knight that way! We all approve of him as our successor, and quite frankly, your opinion does not matter in the slightest. It is our quirk, not yours. What? Sir said, looking confused. You didn't see this in your almighty future vision, did you? They mocked, crossing their arms and rolling their eyes at him. This is so typical of you. You only care about what you can see as far as your stupid visions can tell, but never about the context. You probably saw Izuku get upset, but you couldn't possibly know it was us you were going to speak to. Who are you? He stammered, looking at them in open confusion and distrust. We are the past users of One for All. You'd know about us if you had cared to ask before attacking a kid that had nothing to do with your bullshit. It's not his fault that Toshi dumped your ass. He what? Izuku squeaked from inside the mindscape. That's none of your business, Sir Night-Eye hissed, face a bright rest. Oh, so you can get into our business, but we can't mention your past? The Vestiges scoffed. Here's the deal. You'd be damn lucky to have the kid on your team, because honestly speaking, he's better than this place. We'd gladly see him intern literally anywhere else, where he'd be appreciated. But the kid looks up to you for some reason, so you either accept him as an intern or you don't, which would be your loss. Sir Night-Eye glared at them, still red in the face. He was sure he had screwed up whatever chance he had of an internship here, but to his surprise, Sir Night-Eye, while still keeping eye contact, lifted the staple and marked his paper as approved. Izuku had no idea how, but somehow, despite the Vestiges chewing the pro-hero out, Sir Night-Eye agreed to take him in as an intern. He wasn't really sure how he was supposed to feel about that, and he definitely couldn't look his new mentor in the eyes, once he got back into his own body. Not after that whole mess. He'd been a bit surprised to learn about Toshinori's past with the other hero, and he shuddered at the idea that, in an alternate universe, Sir Night-Eye could have been his dad. Nothing against the man, but no thank you. Togata had been very happy when he learned that he had been accepted. Shota and Toshinori were not as happy. Apparently, things were awkward between those three. But they also supported his decision, which was all Izuku could really ask for. Him and Togata were out on their first patrol. Just a simple patrol around town during the day. Nothing serious or dangerous. So why, oh why, did they run into the head of the Yakuza? Izuku wasn't sure what had happened, but he suddenly had a small girl clinging to him for dear life, and he was face to face with the very villain they were out to get. They weren't ready to fight him, though. This man was dangerous. Izuku knew that. But the little girl was begging him to not let her go. "We can't leave her," Izuku whispered to the Vestiges, who were all telling him to let her go, trying to convince him that they would rescue her later, when they had more power on their side and a thought-out plan. "Kiddo, I know it's hard, but you need to let go," Nana begged him. Danger Sense was currently going crazy, giving him an idea of just how dangerous this man truly was. And yet, Izuku couldn't let go. "I won't leave her," he whispered, having made up his mind. He was just about to take the girl and run, when the Vestiges suddenly took over and forced him to stay still. Izuku felt a stab of betrayal as he was unable to move his body. "Sorry, Izuku, but we can't let you do this," Hikage told him solemnly. Eri, the little girl, was still clinging to him, but then Overhaul did something that made her suddenly freeze up with fear, before she quickly let go of Izuku and rushed back to the villain's side. Izuku tried to run after her, but was once again stopped by the Vestiges, forcing his body to be still. All he could do was cry silently as he watched the girl go. Shota's point of view. Shota and Toshinori had been at home relaxing when there was a knock on the door. With a sigh, Shota got up to answer it, expecting to find one of his students, or the kitchen, on fire. Again. And sure, he had expected one of his students, but he was still surprised to find Izuku standing there, his tail wrapped around himself and looking like he'd been crying. "What happened?" Shota asked, not wasting any time in letting the boy into the apartment. Izuku had hid inside his room ever since he got home from his internship with Sir Night-Eye. He had expected him to show up as broccoli, not whatever this was. I just... Izuku sniffled, clutching at his tail and curling into himself. "The Vestiges didn't think I should be alone right now." "All right," Shota said, looking over the boy worriedly. "Did something happen?" At that, Izuku curled further into himself with a sob. Shota didn't even hesitate as he pulled the boy into a hug. "I couldn't save someone," Izuku whispered into his chest, hands clutching at Shota's uniform. "She was right there, but I couldn't do anything." And, oh, oh no. That explained the tears. Shota knew this was a reality that all of his students would have to face one day, but he had hoped it wouldn't have happened so soon. For fuck's sake, this was the kid's first day! "I'm sorry to hear that," Shota said softly. "Is everything all right?" Toshinori asked, walking up to them with a worried expression on his face. "Rough first day," Shota answered, still hugging Izuku and running his hands up and down his back. "Did Sir Night-Eye do something?" Toshinori asked, voice low and dangerous. Izuku shook his head. "No, it's not him, just... I wasn't good enough," he mumbled, sounding so small in that moment. "It's not your fault, kid," Shota told him, gently but firmly. "She was right there," Izuku argued, more tears falling down his face as he stared up at Shota with desperate eyes. "If only I'd been stronger. If I could have fought back, she wouldn't have to go back to him." "Listen, I don't know what happened, but I'm sure you did everything you could." "I did nothing!" Izuku cried out. I wanted to fight. I wanted to take her and run away, but the Vesta just didn't let me. And now that poor girl is back with Overhaul, and it's all my fault. There was a gasp next to them, and Shota felt his stomach drop at the mention of that villain. Did you just say Overhaul? Shota asked quietly, hoping against all hope that he'd heard wrong. I, um, yes, Izuku answered, sounding confused. Did the kid not know how dangerous this man was? You ran into the head of the Yakuza on your very first day. Shota groaned, hugging Izuku even closer, as if that could somehow protect him from everything that had already happened. Yes, Izuku squeaked out, still sounding lost and confused. He really was just a kid still. My boy. Toshinori sucked in a sharp breath, looking pale as a ghost. You should be happy you are even alive. Toshinori is right. Shota agreed firmly. Not many people have encountered Overhaul and lived to tell the tale. I mean, fuck, kid. You could have been killed. Izuku winced at the word killed and curled further into himself. It seemed like he was finally starting to realize just how dangerous that had been. How about we go and sit down? Do you want some hot chocolate? Toshinori offered him gently, stepping up to them and laying a hand on Izuku's shoulder. The boy sniffled and gave a small nod as he wiped away his tears. Toshinori gave him a small smile before heading over to the kitchen. Meanwhile, Izuku let himself be led over to the couch by Shota, where Sashi wasted no time in curling up on his lap and offering comfort. Shota smiled at the adorable sight, before wrapping a blanket around the kid's shoulder. He then pressed play on the movie they'd been watching, thinking Izuku probably wouldn't mind the distraction. Toshinori soon returned with some hot chocolate for the kid, and surprisingly, a cup for Shota, too. He took it with a smile, thanking his husband as he sat down on Izuku's other side. They watched the movie in relative silence, and Shota couldn't help but think how easy it all felt. If he closed his eyes, it really was like nothing had changed. He could imagine him and his husband together with their two cats, and yet everything had changed. It really was unfortunate what had happened to the kid today, but he also knew he would be okay. Shota and Toshinori would make sure of it. He glanced over at the kid sitting between him and Toshinori, and he couldn't help but smile at the sight. Izuku had at some point fallen asleep during the movie, and was now leaning against Toshinori's side, with Slushy sleeping in his lap. In the end, neither of them had the heart to wake the kid, and so they let him sleep on the couch, making sure to tuck him in beneath lots of blankets, while Slushy slept soundly next to them. They really looked adorable like this, with Izuku in his hybrid form and cuddling Slushy close to his chest. Unable to resist, Shota took Broccoli's Nezu doll and placed it next to Izuku's sleeping form. He then took a quick picture and showed it to Toshinori with a grin. His husband smiled at the sight, albeit a bit confused. Won't Broccoli mind? Toshinori asked quietly. I'm sure he won't, Shota answered with a knowing grin. Then, as quietly as they could, they turned off the lights and headed into their bedroom, leaving the two kids to sleep in the living room. The next morning had been very amusing, seeing how Zuko had freaked out about sleeping on their couch while still human. I've never held my human form for this long, Izuku said to Shota, while Toshinori was in the bathroom. The kid was sitting at the dining table, looking down at his hands with a combination of fear and awe. Why not? Shota asked, as he continued to make breakfast. Well, there's a kind of a limit to how long I can stay in each form, but I think this hybrid form cancels it out. Izuku mused, turning his hands this way and that as he frowned down at them. Shota wanted to ask more, but they were interrupted by Toshinori returning from the bathroom. The conversation smoothly shifted from there, and they went on to eat breakfast together. Shota couldn't help but think how nice it was that the kid was finally joining them at the table. Sure, he loved broccoli, and he'd hate it if the kid decided he didn't want to be a cat anymore, but he also wouldn't trade this for anything in the world. Nana point of view. Hey, kiddo, you, um, are you doing okay? Nana asked Izuku gently, as she sat down on the bed next to him. Instead of responding, Izuku turned up the volume of his headphones and buried his nose deeper into his notebook. We know you can hear us, kid. We are literally in your head, Daigoro scoffed playfully, only to frown when he, too, didn't get a response. Come on, kid. It's been days, Nana cried out, dragging her hand through her hair in frustration. Look, we're sorry for what happened with Eri, but are you really gonna keep ignoring us like this? As expected, Izuku didn't respond. He just kept clicking his pen as he frowned down at his notebook. What will it take for you to forgive us? Hikage asked quietly, only to also be ignored. They sat in silence for a long while, and Nana felt like crying. They had really messed up badly, back when they forced Izuku to let Eri go. At first, the kid was in shock, but then, as time continued to pass, and the reality of it all truly settled in, he'd suddenly gotten angry. And Nana couldn't blame him. After all, what they did, forcibly taking control of his body and making him do something against his wishes, was a huge violation of trust. Nana wondered if they'd ever be able to repair this. There was a knock on the door, startling all of them. Come in, Izuku called out, taking off his headphones. They all were surprised to find Shota stepping through the door and into the room. Hey, kid, how you holding up? The man asked gently. I'm fine, Izuku asked, tilting his head at him in confusion. Why? It's just... Shota trailed off, looking unsure. He then shook his head with a sigh. It's getting late. I guess I was just starting to get a bit worried, since you didn't come home. At that, Izuku turned towards his clock, eyes widening as he saw the time. Oh, I didn't even notice. I guess it's hard to keep track when there's no pain to remind me. Izuku chuckled nervously, flexing his clawed hands with a sheepish smile. It's okay. I was just worried, Shota said, with a small smile, before pausing and looking around the room, as if searching for something. Though I'm a bit surprised the vestiges didn't remind you. Why should I listen to them? Izuku all but growled, startling Shota and causing Nana to flinch. Did something happen? The man asked carefully. Izuku didn't answer, just frowned down at the floor. His ears were laying flat against his head, and his tail was thrashing violently behind him, giving away just how pissed off he was. Look, I won't pretend to understand your relationship, Shota sighed, as he walked over to sit on the edge of Izuku's bed. Nana quickly moved to the side so he didn't sit directly on her. But I don't think bottling it all up is doing you any good. That's rich coming from you, Izuku hissed, showing his fangs, only to slap a hand against his mouth with a yelp and a sorry. Despite everything, Nana couldn't help the amused smile at the sight. The kid really couldn't handle his emotions well while in this form. That's fair, Shota chuckled, not sounding offended in the slightest. But what happened? It must have been something really bad for you to be this upset. Izuku sat quietly for a while, chewing on his lip as he frowned down at the floor. For a moment, Nana wasn't sure what he was going to tell them, but then... Do you remember Eri? Izuku asked softly. The girl from the overhaul case? Yeah. Well, I didn't exactly want to let her go. The vestiges, They took over my body and made me. Oh, Shota breathed out, looking genuinely upset. I can see why that'd be upsetting. But you know they were probably only trying to protect you, right? And while I understand your frustration, I'm personally relieved that they stepped in before things could escalate. It's not about that! Izuku cried out in frustration, cutting Shota off with a growl. They took over! And they wouldn't let me go, even after Overhaul was gone. They waited until we were back at the office before they let me back out again. How can I ever trust them again after that? What if there's someone that needs saving in the future, and I can't do it because of them? Izuku, Nana said sadly, regret filling her very being. The kid barely glanced at her, but his ears twitched in her direction. Izuku, we're sorry. We only wanted you to be safe. That does sound awful. Shota agreed with a sigh as he glared out into the room as if he could stare the vestiges into existence. It is! Izuku cried out. Have they apologized? Or explained themselves? The man asked softly. Yes. They keep saying how they're sorry, and they only want me to stay safe. Izuku huffed, crossing his arms. Good. That's a good start, Shota hummed with a nod. Listen, no one can force you to forget what happened, or to forgive them. But I think you should remember your relationship as a whole. I mean, have they ever broken their trust with you or crossed any boundaries before? Shota asked, clearly trying to make him focus on something more positive. Yes, multiple times, Izuku muttered, remembering all their pranks. Anana flinched back, and Shota seemed genuinely surprised at that. He had probably expected another response, based on his shell-shocked expression. That's not good, the man sighed, before shaking his head. I think you all really need to talk about boundaries. At the end of the day, it's your body and your life. And while I'm glad they are keeping you safe, it should never go so far that it breaks your trust in them. That's what Hounddog keeps saying, too, Izuku muttered, earning a small smile from Shota. They sat in silence for a while, just mulling things over, before Shota cleared his throat. Is there anything I can do to help? At that, Izuku shook his head. No, I don't think so. I honestly feel like this talk has helped a lot. Tayaguro is shaking. Izuku huffed, a small smile on his face. Nana glanced over and, sure enough, the man looked like he was gonna piss himself from terror. Dead or not, Shota's wrath was not one to mess around with. Shota grinned at that. Good. And you know you can always talk to me or Toshinori if you need help dealing with them. Yeah, I know. Izuku sighed before his smile turned a little bit softer. Thanks, Dad. Anytime, kiddo. Shota answered, ruffling Izuku's hair. Now, we should probably head home before Toshinori starts looking for us. Right. I'll see you downstairs? Sure thing. And with that, Shota left the room, leaving Izuku alone to get ready. The boy stood up and started putting his notebooks away. Nana sidestepped to not be in his way. He wasn't even looking at them. Izuku... Not now, Nana, Izuku sighed, as he put his notebook on the table. Okay, she breathed out, relieved that at least the boy was speaking to her again. She disappeared back into the mindscape, just as Izuku changed into his cat form. Things were definitely tense right now, but hopefully they'd be able to overcome this. Izuku's point of view. Izuku wasn't sure how he was supposed to forgive the vestiges for what had happened with Eri. It wasn't even about letting her go. Not really. Just the blatant disregard of Izuku's feeling and locking him away in his own body. It, well, it did not feel good. At all. And sure, he knew they all felt bad. He could literally feel their endless guilt through their bond, but how was he supposed to ever trust them not to do it again? Not to mention how terrifying the thought of them simply taking control was. He doubted they would do it without a good reason, but the fear was still there. He didn't feel safe in his own skin, and he hated it. Shota had tried to help, and the man must have spoken with Toshinori about it, because his mentor suddenly gave a very long and very tiresome speech about the importance of boundaries, but also forgiveness, that Izuku had mostly zoned out. He knew they were just trying to help, but they didn't get it. Not really. They didn't know what it was like, sharing your mind and body with several other beings. He suddenly felt so alone, and like there was no one else he could talk to. Until he remembered there was one person who might understand. Hey, Tokoyami, could we talk? Izuku asked his classmate quietly. They were in the lounge and had just finished eating dinner when Izuku walked up to the other boy and grabbed his attention. Sure, is something the matter? Tokoyami asked, following him to the smaller and more private part of the lounge so they could talk. Well, it's just that I have this problem and, I'm not sure anyone else can relate. They they certainly try, but they just don't understand, you know? Izuku stammered, fiddling with his hands as he glanced up at his classmates. And why do you wish to speak to me? Tokiyami asked, tilting his head in confusion as he watched the other boy curiously. Well, you have a sentient quirk? Izuku answered, before pausing. Did Tokiyami even remember them talking about his quirk being haunted back at the sports festival? Do you remember me telling you about mine? He asked quietly, now uncertain. I remember. Did something happen? Izuku felt some of the tension leaving his body as he let out a sigh of relief. Kind of? Um, it's, well, does Dark Shadow ever do something that scares you? Like you're afraid to lose control? Something close to understanding flashed in Tokiyami's eyes. Many times, Tokiyami answered with a nod. Like during the training camp, for example. I I sometimes fear what she will make me do. He then paused, looking Izuku over. Did yours do something to scare you? A little bit, Izuku admitted quietly. And I'm not sure how to forgive them. I see, his classmate answered, giving him a thoughtful look. Do they regret it? Yes, very much so, Izuku answered with a grimace. They won't stop apologizing. Then I think you should work towards forgiving them, Tokiyami answered bluntly. Huh? Izuku blinked up at him, surprised. Your bond with your cursed spirit is one of eternity, Tokiyami explained solemnly. One that cannot exist if there is any malice between you. You should forgive them, but never forget. You should also work hard to make sure they can't do it again. For a moment, all Izuku could do was stare at his classmate, before he let out a surprised laugh. You make it sound so simple, he chuckled nervously. Well, I've had practice, Tokiyami said with a smile, just as Dark Shadow emerged and laid her head on his shoulder. It hasn't been easy, and there have certainly been times I feared the dark. But with time and hard work, you learn to work through it. Together. Izuku felt a bit choked up as he watched his classmate and his quirk. He remembered how scared Tokiyami had looked during the incident at the training camp. But looking at them now, you could never have guessed such a thing had even happened. He suddenly realized how much he longed for that closeness. He missed Nana's hugs, missed listening to Diagoro's jokes, and he missed talking with Yoichi, En, and Hikage. Heck, he even missed the snappy conversations he would have with second or third. He missed all of them, despite them having been there the whole time. Tokuyami was right. Living like this was miserable, especially if they were going to do it for eternity. Izuku wasn't sure he could forgive them just yet, but maybe he could at least try? That night, Izuku visited the mindscape, where the vestiges were playing a game of Ghost Uno. Izuku cleared his throat, startling all of them, and causing some of them to drop their cards. "Izuku!" Nana cried out in surprise, immediately rushing to her feet and looking like she wanted to hug him but held back. What, what are you doing here?" Instead of answering, Izuku glanced down at the cards that were scattered on the floor. "Can I join?" he asked, surprising all of them, himself included. "Of course!" Taigaro answered with a toony grin. "Come on, kid, help us beat Second's ass!" Izuku smiled a little at that, and sat down next to the man, Nana soon joining him. He knew they needed to talk, but for now, this was nice. Shota's point of view. As time continued to pass, Shota was sure the kid was doing better. He'd asked him about the vestiges, and he said things had smoothed out between them, which was a huge relief. Shota couldn't imagine having a fight with people who lived inside your head. That sounded like literal torture. So, for now, he was happy for the kid. And for a while, things were peaceful. But then there was an update on the overhaul case, and it was like the wound reopened as they suddenly had a date for a raid, and the agencies wanted his students to take part in it. Shota was heavily against it. He did not want his kids, much less Izuku, anywhere near this case. But the thing was, they were already involved, and pulling them out without a reason to would be downright cruel. So Shota had to grit his teeth and let them participate. But that didn't mean he had to be happy about it. It was also hard to watch Izuku psych himself up for the case. The kid obviously still blamed himself for letting the child, Eri, go back to the villain. And after learning the truth of what was going on behind the making of those bullets, well, the kid took that news especially hard. Shota just hoped they'd be able to rescue her without anything bad happening. Sleep didn't come easily for Shota, and he more often than not found himself lying awake and staring at the ceiling. Tonight was one of those nights, but it was no surprise, really, since tomorrow was the day of the raid. It was a given that he would have trouble sleeping. With a sigh, Shota quietly got out of bed and headed out into the apartment. He got himself a glass of water and just stood by the window for a while, watching the trees outside. And that's when he saw it. Someone was up in one of the trees? Shota almost dropped his glass before he recognized who it was, and once he did, he couldn't help but laugh. Of course, his little cat boy would be climbing trees in the middle of the night. With a fond huff, Shota downed the rest of his water before grabbing a jacket and heading outside. He rounded the building and ventured towards the forest, and sure enough, high up in one of the trees was none other than Izuku. As he got closer, he could hear talking. "And you have to promise not to do anything like that again. I I don't like it when you take over without warning," Izuku said into the air, sounding desperate. "We won't," another voice answered, sounding just as desperate, and Shota jumped at the sound of an unknown woman speaking. There was a light breeze, and Shota shuddered from the cold of it. He glanced up at a student, who was frowning up at the stars, and looking like he was in his own little world. "Izuku?" Shota called out, startling the boy. The kid startled, almost falling off the branch he was sitting on. "Shota? What, what are you doing here?" Izuku answered, leaning forward and looking down at Shota from high up on his branch. "I should be asking you that problem, child," Shota huffed fondly. You know it's past curfew, right? I know, Izuku answered sheepishly, before jumping down from the branch and nearly giving Shota a heart attack. Luckily, the boy landed on his feet and seemed completely fine. Still, that was a high fall. I just couldn't sleep, you know? Plus, the stars are so pretty, he said, gaze once again turning to the star-filled sky. I get that. Shota sighed, gaze following Izuku's and landing on the stars. Still, you shouldn't venture outside all alone. I am never alone, Izuku answered with a smile, causing Shota to roll his eyes. You know what I mean, he huffed. Now come on, kid, let's head back inside. Okay, the boy answered, following him back towards the dorm. As they walked, Shota suddenly remembered the conversation he had overheard. By the way, were you talking to the vestiges? Hmm? Oh, yeah. They promised not to take over my body without permission again, Izuku answered with a nervous smile. That's good, Shota answered before pausing, wondering if he should mention this or not. I thought I heard someone earlier. A woman's voice, he said softly, deciding it was better to let the kid know. Izuku stumbled at that, staring at Shota with wide eyes. You heard Nana? I think so. Immediately, the boy's face lit up, and he started to mumble to himself about One for All possibly getting stronger, and the possibility of the other people hearing and perhaps even seeing the vestiges one day. Shota just smiled at that, glad the boy seemed to have found a distraction from the upcoming raid. He'd been awfully tense lately. They soon arrived back at their apartment, and Shota didn't think twice as he let the boy inside. After a quick glance into their bedroom, where Toshinori was still fast asleep, Izuku transformed back into Broccoli and went over to his little house to sleep. Wait, Shota said, only to cut himself off. The small cat was staring at him, tilting his head in confusion. Shota took a deep breath and steeled himself. Awkwardness be damned. He wanted to sleep. He needed to sleep. If he were to be able to get through the raid tomorrow. And having cats nearby helped. Do you want to join us? He asked quietly, trying not to grimace at the stiffness in his own voice. Broccoli, thankfully, seemed happy. The small cat gave a firm nod and meowed before rushing over to his little cat house. Shota had to resist the urge to groan when he realized he was bringing the Nezu doll with him to bed. They quietly ventured into the bedroom where Toshinori and Sushi laid curled up on the bed, both sleeping soundly. Shota watched them with a smile, before climbing under the covers and joining them. Broccoli joined them soon after, settling down with his doll next to his sister and purring loudly. Good night, Broccoli, Shota answered into the darkness, smiling when he heard a meow in response. He had no idea when, or even how, he managed to fall asleep, but it felt like way too soon, when morning came around and it was time for the raid. Shota was thankfully on the same team as Izuku, which meant he would be able to keep a close eye on him. He knew the kid had 7 pro heroes looking out for him inside of his mind, but he was worried, damn it. And he had a right to be. The whole raid was a mess. Shota managed to fall down a literal hole, and then he got stabbed with a quirk that slowed all of his movements down. He had no idea where Izuku was, or if he was even safe. Last time he'd seen him, he'd been fighting the Overhaul. Somehow, other heroes managed to find Shota, and he was helped up to the surface just in time to see the last of the fight. And what he saw probably made him age by a few years. Because there Izuku was, high up in the air, with Eri using her quirk on him as he continuously destroyed his body in order to take down Overall. It was reckless, and Shota was going to make sure to scold him later when they got out of there. The fighting continued, until, somehow, Izuku managed to defeat Overhaul. Shota let out a sigh of relief when Izuku and Eri landed on the ground. only to tense when Izuku let out a painful scream. It sounded like Eri couldn't turn off her quirk, and it was hurting Izuku. Both kids looked terrified as Eri was unable to turn off her quirk. Without a second thought, Shota turned on his own quirk to erase Eri's, and as soon as he did, the screaming stopped. Then, not even a second later, a cloud of smoke suddenly emerged from the student, blocking him from his view. Shota quickly dropped erasure, his heart sinking as he wondered if he'd been too late. Did he get erased? But then the cloud dissipated, revealing Eri and Broccoli. Shit, Shota swore under his breath, as Uraraka and Asui gasped next to him. He glanced up at the news helicopter above them, as well as the several students and pro heroes surrounding them, all watching the two kids with wide, confused eyes. Guess the cat's out of the bag. How the hell am I gonna explain this to Toshi? Some more art! And then it's art of Izuku asleep with Slushy in his arms and the Nezu doll. As well as line art, in case anyone want to color for funsies. And then there's a line art of the same picture. Author's notes. I wasn't sure how deep I wanted to dive into the whole Izu being mad at / scared of the vestiges situation. It's something that's been building up since the start, but I feel like Izuku wouldn't stay mad for too long. He's way too forgiving. Just look at Canon, lol. Still, I wanted to bring it up, since they technically violated his trust. Not just here, but also in earlier chapters, and they should have some consequences. And let's be honest, being ignored by the only person able to see you feels like a fitting punishment. I know this chapter was a bit Izuku and Shota-centric, and I have no excuse, lol. It just happened! I promise we will focus a bit more on other characters soon. Especially Eri, now that she is finally safe and sound. As well as Toshinori, since he will finally learn the truth! Anyway, as always, thank you everyone for your continued patience, comments, and support. Not gonna lie, I've had a rough day, so please be kind in the comments. Anyway, again, hope you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world. And that's a wrap on chapter 48, and we are officially caught up. I'm gonna read chapter 19 before saying my closing remarks. Did I say chapter 19? I meant chapter 49. Chapter 49, not a chapter, life update, on hiatus, not abandoned. Hello everyone! This has been on my mind for quite a while, and I felt like you all deserve an update since it's been 2 months since the last chapter. First of all, this fic is not and will never be abandoned. I promise I will finish it one day, especially since we are nearing the end, so don't worry. The reason why I haven't updated is because life has been, well, a bit much. I changed antidepressants and then forgot to take them for a whole month, which completely messed up my brain and overall mental state. I'm still recovering and am steadily getting better, not to mention how I can feel the longing to write slowly coming back with each passing day. But I don't see a reason to force myself to write, not if it is physically and mentally painful to do so. Even writing this is hard because my mind is such a mess. But I know this is just temporary and that I will get back up and get back to writing again, because it is something I know I enjoy. Hopefully, you will stick around until then. Does this make sense? I don't know. But I just wanted you all to know I'm still alive, and even if things aren't that great right now, I'm recovering, and we will finish the story one day. Sorry for the lack of new chapters. You all are amazing, and I love you all so much for all the support. I hope to be able to bring you a new chapter soon, even if I can't promise when. Stay safe, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world. And that's a wrap on the one they call Broccoli. We are officially caught up, and all my next updates for the one they call Broccoli will be as the author updates. So that's really exciting. Oh my god, this last chapter, Toshinori's gonna finally know, and I cannot tell you, my first time reading through this, I was so fucking pissed at the vestiges. So fucking pissed. Because what the fuck, guys? Why are you gonna take control of him like that? I mean, I know you're trying to keep him safe, but then they also, point out, yeah, they have been violating like their stuff by pulling pranks on Shinso. They have been like going over their boundaries. So I really like the author giving them a punishment. Anyway, please go show the original author Texiliaz some love, and please leave me a comment. I love reading your comments. They make me so happy. Please leave me specifically hate comments, and I'll shout you out in the next video. That being said, shout outs to Solar Flash 99, Sayuri Rodriguez K9H20 or 20, and Kathleen Spangle 6253. Thank you for your hate comments, and yes, I also hate the glitches, and they are caused not by my mic, but by my laptop freezing and making the recording software freeze and making it glitch. That's what's causing it. It's not my mic, it's my shitty Chromebook laptop. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you when the next chapter comes out. Bye-bye, pups.